run your own freelance business, or maybe you're thinking about picking up some business on the side. Well, then you need FreshBooks. FreshBooks is the quickest and easiest way to get invoices out to your clients. It's easy to use. It works anywhere, available from any device on the desktop, iPhone, iPad, Android, and all of your data is backed up and secure. And it makes it really easy to get organized and get paid. You'll be tracking time, logging expenses, and invoicing your clients in no time. You can also save time billing, freeing up several days per month to focus on the work that you love, and you get paid faster. FreshBooks customers are paid on average 5 days faster because there's a link on the invoice that says pay me now. And it's a great way to grow your business. Plus, FreshBooks is offering a 30-day trial. That's right, 30-day trial if you try them out. So go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Once again, for a 30-day trial, go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section.
Hello and welcome to the Freelancers Show. Today on our panel, we have Jeremy Green.
Hey.
Erik Dietrich.
Hi, everyone.
And I'm Jonathan Stark. And the topic for today is writing better project proposals. We've all recently had experience with things going wrong around the house and tradesmen coming in and giving us impenetrable proposals to fix a project. And I think there are a lot of parallels to the way that we as freelancers often write our proposals. So I thought it'd be a fun thing to talk about today. So who's the person with the pool problem? I didn't see which one of you wrote that.
That's me.
That's fun, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's not fun at all. There's a leak in part of the pumping system underneath a big concrete slab. And right now we basically are not running the pump at all until, well, only sporadically until we can get somebody out to fix it. And that's weeks out, or hopefully next week if we're lucky.
Yeah, that's a party.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we also had a pool-related plumbing problem last week that was less severe but still annoying, where we have our kids talked my wife into putting a kiddie pool in the front yard because we're classy like that. And, so, we've got like a garden and stuff out front and a hose that comes off the front of the house. And it's a regular thing during the summer to go out there and, water the garden and the bushes and maybe perhaps hose the chalk off the front walk periodically. The kids draw pictures out there. And so she felt, it's like, fine. The things always work perfectly. And this one particular day, she fills up the kiddie pool, and the handle, this sort of twisty dial knob thing on the spigot that sticks out of the foundation, just would not close. So she calls me out, and the thing just wouldn't budge. So like an idiot. So like, and we have this weird hose. It's like a stretchy hose. So like when it's off and all the water goes out of it, it gets really small, which is convenient for hanging it up and storing it. But in this particular situation, it was really difficult to tell if it was off or not, because it will continue spraying even when the spigot's turned off. So I went in and I got a wrench and I twisted the thing down. I'm telling you, I had to put some real back into it, to the point where I was afraid I was going to rip the thing off the front of the house. And we couldn't tell if it was off or not because the hose was compressing and it was still spraying. So like an idiot, I unscrewed the hose from the house because I was like, well, if I do that, I can tell if it's actually on or off. But now I'm wearing flip-flops and standing in mulch. So now it's spraying full force onto my feet, and I'm slowly sinking into the garden. And okay, so anyway, it was a comedy of errors. And I finally got it almost all the way closed, but I still could not, even with a wrench, get it safely turned all the way off. So we called a plumber, and this guy comes out and takes a look at it and gives us this estimate. It was like, I won't bother reading it. It was just ridiculously full of jargon and overly itemized. And there's going to be a 3/4 inch bib tool and a hose cock and a blah, 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 blah. A whole bunch of stuff I didn't understand, didn't want to understand. Reading it made me feel like an idiot. I didn't know. And nowhere on the thing did he say that it would fix it. I mean, I assume it would fix it, but he didn't actually say that. And furthermore, he didn't say how long it would be fixed for, or if it was going to be guaranteed in any way, how long it would take to do. All he did was make basically a parts list that told me nothing about about, he didn't connect the dots between what I wanted, which, was a working thingy. Like I wasn't even calling it the right thing. And he was, correcting me and insisting that I used his words for everything. It's a hose bib, ladies and gentlemen. The thing is called a hose bib. So, it's a very demeaning experience. And really all I wanted him to say was, I can come out, tomorrow. You're going to have to replace this thing. We have to do that. I wish he had used my words for it instead of correcting me and saying, we're going to replace the spigot, which is the wrong word, but the word I used. And because the old one is just old and it suddenly broke, we're going to replace the old one. It's going to require a few things. We're going to have to go into the house and, there are going to be some things you need to do. But the long and the short of it is that we're going to replace it with one that won't freeze in the winter. It's going to be easy to operate. Even the kids will be able to operate it. And it will be back. We'll back it with a 10-year guarantee. You'll never have to worry about this particular hose thing again. And while he was at it, he could have said things like, and we'll come in and winterize your plumbing once a year. And we'll do all, we can do all of these other things. I noticed when I was in the basement that you don't have this or that, or the water heater's really old. Would you be interested in, this sort of service that we do? Because I am super not handy, if you couldn't tell by the story. and we had these conversations. Like, he could have known this. It wasn't like it would take ESP, but instead of him recognizing that I was a complete klutz around the house and offering me services that would be perfect for somebody like me, he just made himself like every other plumber. Like, I could take his parts list and go to somebody else and say, hey, could you give me a better price on this? Because he described exactly what he was going to do and every part that he was going to use. And he presented himself like a commodity, basically. So in my work, I see lots of proposals. I've seen proposals that I actually requested. So for work that I want done from freelancers, and I've, as part of my job, review proposals on a regular basis for people who are writing them and for people who are submitting them to my clients. So I read a lot of proposals, and this behavior is certainly not limited to plumbers.
Nope.
Freelancers of all types do this constantly. And I think the psychology is partially like, hey, here's all this stuff I'm going to do. Here are all the activities that I'm going to engage in on your behalf, as a way to justify they think it's a way to justify to the client that a lot of work is going to go into this. And I'm really expert at all these things, React Native, CLI, and, all this soup, this sort of acronym soup that goes into what I see in these proposals. And you can just imagine clients who, run a shoe store reading, information about JavaScript APIs and just flipping through, 100 pages of garbage that they can't read and don't want to understand, just to look to the very end to find the price and to hopefully see somewhere in there that the thing that they want to achieve will be achieved on some timetable with some guarantee. So, okay, that was a long monologue. Let me throw it over to you guys. Like, have you experienced this sort of thing with freelancers or workmen, or this sort of client, bad client experience?
Yeah, so I have across the board. I was just thinking of the example I mentioned in the chat earlier of, it wasn't the proposal per se, but I had a sump pump that was going bad, so I had someone out to replace it. And as long as he was doing that, we decided that we would have him move some of the appliances around in the basement, the water heater, to open up a room and give us some more space. So it wasn't the proposal, but during the course of this, there was a lot of updating on each little detail. It felt like that episode of Seinfeld, yes, where Jerry's dealing with the contractor.
You want this hinge or this hinge?
Yeah. So, I mean, there were things about the widths of the pipes, and I'm going to need to route this up here and hang this. And and I actually am fairly handy, but I still don't care. All I'm wondering is, okay, so based on this information you're coming to me with, are we still going to be able to put the water heater there? Because if we can, I don't necessarily need to know this stuff. So yeah, with contractors and, in reviewing RFPs or what have you, with freelancers too, it's sort of like feels to me a lot of times like there's this fear deeply baked in of being called to the carpet on your pricing. So I'm going to charge you, $1,200 or whatever it is for the price of the job. But like, look, there's all this stuff. So you can't negotiate this price. It's, it's okay. It's like, I get the sense that they fear I'm going to try to nitpick and drive them down on price.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've had exactly the same experience you guys are describing with contractors working on systems around my house, telling me down to, okay, I need to replace this one warning light that's a $2.50 light bulb. And then I need to replace a couple of washers here, and those are each $1. And, getting just down to that level. And I think I literally said a few times during that interaction, whatever you do, the whole thing worked the way it's supposed to work. And I've certainly in the past been on the other end of that, of doing proposals poorly and telling people details that they don't care about, at least in words that they don't care about or understand. I've been on the side of trying to feel like I need to educate clients about using the right words when they really don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, back in my days of running an agency, there were proposals that we would send out to absolutely non-technical people. We're talking about people that are, the founder of a landscape business that is really high-end landscaping, but small, a small company that does high-end, high-dollar work, and trying to explain to them what it meant to use, responsive CSS techniques. And, yeah, exactly. It was dumb. And like, if we would have said it'll work on your phone.
Yes. Right.
Yeah. Okay, great. He would have been all in on that. But instead we got bogged down in the weeds. And I think that there's kind of two reasons that this comes into play, in at least I think two reasons that I think we were getting into this. One of them was not understanding our customer, and also having, I guess, multiple types of customers, because we did have customers that did care about it. What are the responsive CSS techniques you're going to use on that? And in those situations, we were talking to, a technical buyer, and we weren't technically subcontractors on a role, but it was almost the type of relationship that a subcontractor would have with a more experienced contractor that is, subbing out the implementation work.
Right.
And it's important that everybody talk on with the same lingo and the same vocabulary. But when it's not that type of relationship, it's kind of counterproductive to assume that it is that kind of relationship, and leads to the situation that you described, Jonathan, where, you feel like you're kind of being talked down to by somebody that's insisting that you're not using the right words to describe the problem that you have.
Right.
And then I think the pricing thing, it kind of comes from maybe assuming that it's that same type of relationship, and what people call the cost plus model, where you have to justify, here's what it's going to cost me to get these parts. And so then I'm going to add on whatever my profit is for this job and show you all of that. And, if you're a subcontractor working for a bigger contractor, sure, maybe that makes sense. Maybe that's what you got to do. But if that's not the audience that you're talking to or the customer you're talking to at that time, it's kind of counterproductive and leads to these bad situations that we're describing here.
Yeah, the cost plus and then the labor is kind of interesting as you're saying that, because I'm thinking it's probably not so much with app dev or professional services and much with contractors. They almost toss the labor piece in apologetically. Mm-hmm. So here are the parts, and then there's the labor. I got to do this. I got to get paid. Like that's kind of the demeanor they take, which I find strange, because it's like, well, I mean, of course, but like I don't care about any of this. I just care about having my stuff done.
Yep.
Yeah, I love the description that you brought up, Jeremy, between the two types of customers you worked for. That some of them did understand breakpoints and CSS, and others were they understood mulch. So it's like look, those a lot of people I talk to think they are consultants, or they think they are freelancers. I guess it's true that they are, but when they're doing staff augmentation types of work, they find it really hard to do value pricing. And I'm like, of course, because the people who are hiring you are already experts at what you do. They just don't have enough hands to do it. So they're not going to sit there and listening to you sort of second guess the decisions that they have already made on an expert basis, because they know what they're talking about. So if you are, this is a great, it's sort of a good, not a red flag, but this is a good litmus test for if you're working with the kinds of clients who are going to lead to more hourly work, or if you want to become more of an advisor and get more strategic engagements and value price your work. You're almost certainly not going to be able to sell value priced project work to someone who's as good at what you do as you are. You know, it's like imagine if this plumber who came to my house to fix the hose bib. Imagine if I was a plumber, I just didn't have time to work in my own house. Then I would read the thing and I'd be like, "You got to be kidding me! You're going to charge me $5 for a 3/4 inch blinker, your blinker fluid's low." And it's like, I would nickel and dime them, or I would be like, "You're crazy," right? So if folks who are listening are used to being, having clients who insist on the equivalent of an itemized list of, okay, give me your timesheet. How long did it take you to back up the database? How long did it take you to redo the schema? How many lines of JavaScript did you write today? And if they care about that kind of thing, you're probably working for the kind of client who's never going to let you get any kind of pricing leverage.
Yeah, that sounds miserable too. So there's that component. Like if I think back to the early days, I might have had some things like that. That is not a fun way to work, because they're not only going to nickel and dime you on price, they're going to second guess everything you're doing, inject what they think you ought to be doing, and so on and so forth. Like Jonathan, as you were talking about that, I was nodding along, because I've actually ranted here and there on my blog about how an awful lot of people in the software world call themselves consultants when they're really staff augmentations or contractors. And so in the context of writing these proposals, I think there might be a sanity check where this isn't to say that you wouldn't take a staff augmentation gig, but if you're writing a proposal with this level of technical detail because you think that your buyer's interested, you might want to consider that an inflection point. Like, is this really the sort of gig I should be pursuing? Or should I look for a way to serve buyers that have a more disparate set of expertise where I'm actually the expert?
Yeah, I totally agree. And so just to follow on from that point, in a context of a conversation like this, I consider the word expert to be extremely subjective and relative. So if you are, I'm pretty good at responsive web design, but Ethan Marcotte's the expert. So if I'm on a job that Ethan's on, he's going to tell me what to do and I'm going to listen. But if I'm going to do a responsive web design for the, Domino's, I'm the expert. And they hire me because they don't want to tell me what to do, because they know they don't know what to tell me. So they would expect me to do what I think should be done. They consider me the expert on this particular thing. So a great way to suddenly get treated like an expert is to stop trying to attract clients who are better at what you do than you are, and go after clients who are great at what they do, but they don't have a clue what you do, or how you do it, I should say. They understand what you do, but you build websites, or you write copy or headlines or direct mail or whatever it is that you do. And they understand that you're good at that. They're going to be good at what they're good at. And you can be the expert and enjoy the benefits that come with that, which are, a lack of micromanagement, the ability to write outcome-based proposals and base those on value rather than the labor that you're going to put into it, because they're not going to be interested in breaking it down. They just want to make sure their hose isn't leaking.
Yeah, if I think of sort of reapplying this metaphor, if you could do a sanity check as this plumber by going out and saying, Jonathan, this is the outcome I'm going to give you. Your kids are going to be able to operate this thing. It's not going to leak. If you then come back and say, well, what kind of, hose bib washer are you using? To me, if I'm that plumber, I start to think maybe this isn't the best client. And the conversation I have with you is a frank and earnest one of, I'm curious why you aren't doing this yourself. You seem to know your stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah, why don't you just do it yourself? And that leads straight into a why conversation, which I talk about here and elsewhere, where if you're getting any, I mean, that's a great example. I've never even thought of that one. Like that's a great why question. If they start to question individual line items, basically, then to push back and say, well, why does it? I love that. Why don't you do it yourself? You seem like an expert here. Why don't you do it yourself? Oh, no. I'm just, and what do they, this software people always say this, software clients always say this. Oh, I know enough to be dangerous. Like that's a scary client, because they actually don't know what they're talking about, but they want to be involved in the process in a way that is going to be almost certainly problematic if you can't sort of nip that in the bud, or at least build it in as a piece of the offering that, you sort of educate them along the way.
Mm-hmm.
There's a talk I do about a particular, I had an engagement a little while back where I was redesigning somebody's website. They had a desktop friendly website that was mobile hostile. And I gave them a proposal where the specific desired outcome from the client, not me, was that it passed the Google mobile test when that was a thing a few years back, because this was one of those businesses that lived or died on SEO, and the word on the street and the word that this business owner had heard was that if the website wasn't mobile friendly, then they were going to get penalized in the search results. And I said to the guy, obviously I'm going to have to redesign the site to a certain extent. It's going to, I'm going to be making changes, visual changes, but you are not going to be allowed to review the design or have any sort of design feedback on it. I'm going to follow best practices for achieving this outcome. And then when we're done, and I'll basically follow the design of the site, but we're not going to have meetings about, make this button a little bigger. Like that is not part of the deal. And when I say this to people, their jaws drop open because they're so used to having like weekly design reviews with the client. And they're like, do you like this blue or that blue? Or should we use this font or that font? It's like, you're the expert. Because if you ask the client questions that you're supposed to be an expert about, they're going to give you their opinion. Like if you ask me my opinion about something, I'll be like, well, my opinion is this, but I don't really care. And I think you're the expert, but you asked for my opinion. So there it is. So like you're abdicating responsibility. You're abdicating the responsibility that your expertise brings with it. The whole reason they hired you, you're giving it up to them and saying, oh, well, you're the expert. You should be making these design decisions. And the designers will say back to me, well, I want them to like it. I'm like, well, is that the goal? Is the goal of the project that the CEO likes the website? Or is the goal of the project to pass Google's mobile test so we don't get dinged in the SEO? Because if, you need to pick which goal it is, because you may be able to thread the needle and get both, but why don't you just do the one that's actually going to have a business impact and ignore the one that is just a distraction?
Yeah. And by taking all of those questions to the client, in some ways you undercut yourself and are, kind of actively working against you being perceived as the expert. And, you do that for long enough, they're going to start to decide, hey, I'm making all the decisions. This guy's just implementing the stuff.
Yep.
So we, in my content marketing business, doing blogs for dev tools companies, tech companies that are marketing to developers, we have a parallel, and I have a very similar conversation at times to the one you just described, Jonathan, where an initial conversation typically with the clients is that I will say something along the lines of, we don't do revisions on the blog posts. So they say, what if I have notes and I want the tone of this paragraph to change or what have you? And I say, we don't do that. You get a blog post, we do those, as kind of the basic units of what we're delivering. That also often takes them aback, but it's a very good differentiator from whether we're talking about sort of like a patronage kind of relationship versus a concrete goal where we're trying to get you more subscribers, more conversions. Because if it's the subscribers and conversions, they're going to say, you guys have done this with a bunch of blogs. You know how to build a following, so do that. Versus if we get into these conversations with, whether it's the CEO or whoever it may be, about what they like in a blog post, this becomes sort of a relationship where there's an unlimited possibility for non-value add work. So we filter that out in advance, and in forms, we have kind of a stock set of proposals since this is more of a productized service, but it informs the nature of these proposals where what we're really talking about is outcomes and goals that they'll have for their blog. And we're not putting in details about, what the tone of the blog post is going to be and things like that.
Yeah, that in this example that I gave where I was saying no design reviews, I said that, I said to the guy, you're welcome to, in the proposal, you're welcome to, give me feedback if you want, but it's honestly probably a waste of your time. There are better things for you to be doing. And, if you send it in, I may take it, I may reject it, but it's probably just a waste of everyone's time. To your point, Erik, that would be a waste of time for someone far up in an organization to be like critiquing each individual blog post. It doesn't make sense. It's like, hey, what are we going to measure? We're going to measure traffic. Okay. I will get back to you every other week and give you the traffic numbers, and if it's going up, we're happy.
And that's actually, you'd be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't be, how many people do, these growing organizations at the executive level want this because, hey, it's my brand. I kind of want to approve and be involved in everything that's being said. So we differentiate a lot. Do you view your blog as a marketing tool, or do you view it as sort of a personal expression? If it's the latter, we're probably not a fit. And being able to differentiate like that is just so powerful. Like kind of once you have the confidence there and you can filter out, it comes, after some battle scars. So in the beginning, we tried to accommodate everybody, and we learned the hard way that these relationships that were of that kind of patronage variety just didn't go well. So now I don't even view that as a lost opportunity. It's kind of a relief to filter that out in the initial pre-sales type conversations.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah.
So the title of this episode is Writing Better Project Proposals. So we've probably haven't gotten too very specific about that. So, Erik, since you were just mentioning proposals, I know they're sort of productized and baked and not super customer specific. But could you talk through a little bit what one of those proposals would contain?
Sure. The hit subscribe proposals are pretty stock, but it really is, it's talking about the goals that we're going to chase, and those are customized per client depending on the pre-sales conversations. But we really keep it at a pretty high level that pretty much anybody in their organization is going to understand. So, what are we chasing here? More conversions, more trial downloads, more people signing up for the email list, some combination thereof. And then we offer a set of guarantees of what the nature of the service delivery is going to be like. So one of our differentiators is real cadence delivery of blog posts, which people can understand. You get a blog post per week like clockwork. We always hit our deadlines. It's things of that nature, things that are kind of promising them what they're going to get that we can deliver on, and goal setting. If I think of proposals, because I'll still do some consulting in the IT management and strategy world from time to time, depending on it. Over the years, those proposals, I guess just due to confidence and not needing them as much, has really shrunk. So it's kind of similar there, where it's like, all right, here's the goal. That we're going to have this 2-week engagement. When we're done, you're going to have a roadmap that tells you what you should be doing in your application portfolio for the next 6 months or something like that. It's very clear. And I even have somebody who's not steeped in what I'm doing read it over, and I get quick feedback like, do you understand this? Because if not, then you've got the parts list or whatever from the plumber.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I do the same thing. So I'll talk to for a project that I'm going to value price. I have, i.e., not a productized service with a published price, but I'll have a pre-sale, a initial meeting, and talk to people about the project, because first they'll tell me all these like sort of low level details about they want this and they want that, and I'm like, okay, great. And then back up, say, okay, why are you guys doing this? Why don't you just do it yourself? Why hire someone expensive like me when there are lots of cheaper options? Why this? Why that? And they'll explain all those things, and I'm sure, positive that this leads to a really high close rate for me, because I filter out anybody who can think of cheaper options that they're considering. Like, well, all right, well, I'm not going to waste my time writing a proposal for you. So that's great. I'm glad I found that out first. So I don't write as many proposals as I have leads, because it's not always a good fit. So the kinds of things that I'll put in there in a proposal It's just to give people a little bit of tactical information. The structure is basically, I start off with a situation appraisal, and it's like, here is the current state of your business, and here's the problem or opportunity that we are all going to collaborate on to either capture or fix.
Yeah.
So something happened. It's always anybody in the business, from customer service to the CFO or CEO. Everyone's going to understand this problem. Big competitor Amazon moved into your space. Okay, here's the problem. So we believe, strategically, we are in agreement that the way to do this is to double down on bricks and mortar because they're not there yet. Okay, that's what we decided to do. We're going to enhance the bricks and mortar experience with, and we think we can do that with an interactive augmented reality app on the phone. Okay, that's a stupid idea, but anyway, that's the idea. So, okay. That anchors the entire proposal. And there, oftentimes I'll try to throw some sort of estimated dollar amount in there, the size of the opportunity, the size of the market, the potential brand impact of a negative, of a failure, some gigantic number that I can add in there. That's credible, that's plausible, that, I'll say, roughly if we say X and Y are true, even if X and Y aren't exactly right, we're talking about a $10 million thing here, or a $50,000 thing here, or, an opportunity of this size. Then I'll say, okay, here are 3 ways that we could engage, we could work together to capture this opportunity or fix this expensive problem. And there'll be three different options. I'll say, my level of involvement will be typically increase from 1 to 3. The prices will be low, medium, high. And the whole time, I'll talk about, we'll have a weekly meeting, or I'll give you a PDF of the system architecture. There'll be some deliverables in there, things that we talked about, things that seem to be important to them and I believe are likely to be delivered through the course of the project. But I don't focus on that. The focus in each option will be some description of what it would be like to work together, maybe a couple of deliverables, but then benefits. The benefits of this option are X, Y, and Z. And there'll be, again, anybody, especially the CFO, will be able to understand these benefits. And I tell people when they're talking to me, I regularly, as part of my coaching, review people's proposals before they send them out. So my student will say, okay, I'm going to write this proposal for this security company. Here's what I've got. And I'll say, okay, great. Read through it. And almost always they leave out the benefits. They say what they're going to do. And even after, I've tried to drill it into them, they always forget the benefits, because it's so easy as someone who understands the outcomes of the benefit of the inputs. So I'm going to make in a mobile world, it'd be like, oh, I'm going to make the buttons on the website finger friendly. That's not an outcome. That's an input. That's like something you're going to do. And you need to connect the dots so that even someone who wasn't in the room with you when you had this discussion, if the CEO talked to you or the CIO talked to you and you come up with this proposal and they're going to give it to the CFO to review, that person wasn't in the room there. They didn't discuss all of the intricacies of mobile web design with you. So you can't educate them in the sales meeting. In the proposal, you need to say, instead of saying merely, I'm going to make the buttons bigger, you can say, I'm going to make the buttons bigger because that's more finger friendly on mobile devices, which is the majority of your traffic now, which is going to lead to more conversions. So you have to connect the dots for them all the way down so that somebody who wasn't even in the room and is completely non-technical and only cares about bottom line things can say, oh, well, yeah, more conversions on mobile would be great. And if you make bigger buttons or bigger form fields, or you switch the soft keyboard, I don't care, whatever. More conversions on mobile, that's what I want. What's the price of this option? $50,000. That's the deal. So it's really important. I find myself saying all the time, connect the dots, connect the dots, connect the dots. Tell them in business terms what the business outcome is going to be. Bigger buttons is not a big business outcome. So then, so these options, each one will have individual benefits. Then I will often put a section about, why me? Why didn't you pick somebody else? There are a lot of smart cookies out there. You could have done this internally. You could have outsourced this to Costa Rica. You could have done all these other things. And I know the answers why they didn't, because I asked them in the meeting, why didn't you outsource it? Why didn't you do it internally? And I'll say, like, why me? Boom, boom, boom. Here are the reasons you gave me why I am the right choice. And then pricing terms, so at the end, generally always with rare exceptions, I can't actually think of one, but I'm sure I've made an exception at one time or another. I'll say, payment is due 100% in advance. Oh, I thought of an exception. Yeah. Payment is due 100% in advance, and I can get started on this date. This proposal expires in 2 weeks. So, that's basically an entire proposal. And for me, it'd be like 3 to 5 pages tops. And the exception that I have is if the price is really, really high, like, $250,000 or something like that, I won't ask for it all up front because I don't want all that money up front. I'd rather have it just sort of spread out over time. But in general, anything under $100,000, I'm just going to ask for it up front. So yeah, that's basically it. You don't have to get into field definitions or schema definitions or script lists or ERDs or here are the models I'm going to build into the Rails app. They don't care.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of proposals over the years that just have all this boilerplate. And I think that everybody involved would all agree upon seeing it that nobody will ever read this in its entirety. Mm-hmm. And I always wonder why things like that get made. It's a study in human psychology, I suppose. Like for me, I
committees
time box. Yeah, fair enough.
And lawyers.
Yeah. So I'll time box my proposal writing because I know subconsciously that my lizard brain is going to attach like some cost fallacy to this. So if I spend days writing a proposal, I'm going to be at a weaker bargaining position when I'm, following up with the client or whether they're agreeing to it or not, any subsequent discussions, versus if I keep it relatively short, there's not going to be that impulse to try to make it work because I've already started investing in this.
Oh, that's an important point. You don't want to get overinvested in the proposal or in the sales process because then you start to feel you get loss aversion. You really start to want to land the deal because you put all this time into it.
Yeah, for me, kind of templating the proposals helps. Like for the content business, that's easy. We have, a very well done template that we just tweak, so we can fire one of those off almost immediately. For management consulting, though, I have a sort of a conceptual template that's very similar to what you described, Jonathan, with business opportunity. And then I also do a similar thing where I'm always going to provide 2 or 3 options. And I keep that pretty short, pretty readable for enterprise clients that are going to want like contractual terms. I tend to set that aside as another whole deal that's separate. Like the proposal is sort of unofficial assent. And then their contractual things will be separate. So I also don't try to put too much in the way of terms into the proposal, except at the broadest level, payment terms, timeline, that sort of thing.
Yep. Yeah, the same way.
And I think you also want to make sure to watch out that that process of you preparing a proposal isn't actually you already doing work for the client that you're not getting paid for. And that's pretty easy to do when somebody comes to you with something that's not entirely scoped down and they don't exactly know what they need. And really, your first engagement in those cases should be a road mapping or research and development session, project of some sort. You want to definitely avoid doing just tons of research in order to write the proposal in the first place. And I've seen that happen to people, and I've been in the situation of spending a month writing a super detailed proposal, doing all kinds of stuff that in hindsight was us doing free work for that client, telling them what they needed to do and how they needed to do it. And
I've got a good one for you. So I talked to someone, this was going back a little while, but I talked to someone who, client asked for a thing. It was very much a punch list. We want this, we want these features. And the developer was like, okay, let me put together a proposal for you, but they weren't sure it was actually possible. So they built it to see if it was possible. And now they were like way over invested in it. And now they're like, I already built the thing. Like I can't, I might as well just sell it to them. Right. And I'm like, oh, and it's like, ouch. Yeah. But to Jeremy's point, if there's a huge degree of uncertainty about, let's just say it's feasibility. Maybe the thing that they want is as the consultant, as the expert, you're not sure if it's feasible. And you're okay, well, let's start with a feasibility study so that we don't engage in some big project between our two companies that can't happen. The technology might just not be there yet. There's a lot of things that, in the mobile space, there are a lot of things iOS that you think intuitively as a developer should work, but Apple just makes not work. So you'd be like, oh, it should work. I mean, there's no reason why it wouldn't work except for Apple's business model, but okay. So sometimes you do have to do, prototypes or a test or something like that. Mm-hmm. But absolutely, if you do that as spec work to hopefully get a gig, it sends all the wrong signals. It's probably a waste of your time. It creates resentment. It can create resentment. And to give some time box context, from my world of proposal writing, I have for custom projects, I know I have a basic template for what I want to write. And it's almost in my mind, it's almost like Mad Libs. Like I know I can't write a good proposal if I don't get the answers to these 12 questions. So I've got the 12 questions or some variation of them. And I go into the preliminary meeting to get those questions answered. And when I get the answers, I write them down. And then I just plug them into the proposal. It's like it writes itself. So usually for me, there's like an email or two back and forth between some new prospect. We set up a phone call. We have an hour-long phone call, and then I'll take it's usually, I'd say average about 3 or 4 hours to write the proposal. And this could be for a 10,000, a range from 10,000 to 50,000, or it could be a range from 75,000 to 3 million. It has the price that I'm going to put on it has absolutely no bearing on the length of the proposal. They're like 3 to 5 pages long, regardless of what the price is going to be. And they're super duper outcome focused. So
what about the tone? Like, I was kind of wondering what tone, conversational, bloggy, white papery.
I try to write the way I talk, which is not, and I don't necessarily recommend that for everyone, but for me, it works. So I say I and you in the proposal. So like, you told me in our meeting the other day, you told me that this, your business is facing this kind of thing. I don't get into the party of the third part BS or and I don't use we when it's just me. And I don't use Jonathan Stark Consulting Inc. will do this or that and put on airs. Because I'm not going to put on airs in the engagement. I'm just not like that. I'm casual. I'm relatively casual person. And that has never prevented me from working with really big companies. So, but I don't think it's because I'm casual that I got hired by those people. And I don't think if I was more professional, buttoned up type of person, I don't think that would have prevented me, or I don't really think it helps one way or the other, as long as you're authentic to the way that you're going to be in the engagement, then you're automatically going to filter out clients who want someone who's more official, let's say, or more legal, more boilerplatey. But I don't even have my proposal. If you say you need to do this, I'm going to do this. Literally, I say it like that. It's very casual, relatively casual. It's like, I would call it business casual. How's that? It's sort of a polo shirt level of casualness.
I like that description.
Yeah. And then it gets to the end and it's very handshake type agreement. I don't have any, I don't even know what MSA stands for. I don't send any kind of other paperwork. It's just this proposal, sign at the bottom. Here's where you send the check. And if they ask for an NDA, and I believe that it's actually a real opportunity, I'll sign an NDA. I think I've signed one non-compete in my entire history for a really, really big client. But other than that, and it was an industry that it was a weird industry. So it was highly unlikely that I was going to work with somebody else in that space. But generally, I don't get I'm just kind of myself at all times. And what that does is automatically filter out clients who would not like me, where the project would turn into torture because, whatever, they're expecting a tie.
Yeah. So Jonathan, you mentioned one thing briefly that I think is worth circling back on and discussing briefly, and that's the idea of having an expiration date on your proposals. Mm-hmm. That's a thing that I had not done in the past, but I do now, and I think it's very helpful for several reasons. One, it does give the prospect some sense of urgency. Lets them know that this price for this job is not always going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely helps, when somebody comes back a year and a half later with a proposal, says, hey, let's do this thing now. If you already had an expiration date on it, it makes that conversation about, well, we're going to have to revisit this and there'll be a new proposal, makes that whole conversation easier.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I occasionally do give people proposals for things for which they have a hard due date. They're trying to get their app ready for some convention or a conference.
The Olympics. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And in those kind of things, I am always very careful to say, in order to meet your deadline, you must accept this contract. You must accept this proposal and make your first payment by such and such a date, or I cannot guarantee anything.
Mm-hmm.
And make it very clear that, my ability to meet a deadline is dependent on their ability to accept the proposal and make payment in a timely fashion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. I don't even agree to deadlines anymore because you're 100% right to do that, but then they can still mess the deadline up throughout the project unless it's something that you're really doing in a vacuum and doesn't really need anything from them. Then I would make an exception. But to me, that's almost not even a realistic project without needing any kind of collaboration with the client. Like I define a project to be a collaborative enterprise between, the consultant and the client. And if there's going to be any kind of collaboration, then I just flat out won't agree to a deadline. And if there's something like it's the Olympics or whatever, then I just don't guarantee it. I said, well, we'll have something before then, but I can't guarantee some list of features or anything like that. But I generally shy away from those because it's just too much stress. I can't take it. I theoretically, if you were cool with it and you didn't mind that kind of an adrenaline rush, then if I was going to do something like that, I would price it such that I could pour resources into the beginning of the project, and I'd probably hire a few people to just dog the client because the client is always the slowest. They're always the slowest part. Well, maybe not always, but typically, in my experience, the client is always the bottleneck. It's never the consultant because it's the consultant's full-time job. And with me, I don't take on a lot of clients at once. So it's usually the client gets busy, it's vacation, they can't get back to you. It takes 3 weeks to give me credentials to SSH into some server. And it's like, come on. So, but to the expiration point, the everything you said is true. It gives you like sort of a talking point for if they do come back to, they go dark 6 months later, they come back, okay, we're ready to start. And it's like, well, that proposal is not good anymore. But I actually put it in there to do that. But in the more near term, what it allows me to do is it basically sets me up for a chain of emails that will happen, of course, across that 2-week period if they don't get back to me right away. And all of that's predicated on a question that I ask in the sales meeting where I ask them, does this need to be done now? Can't we put this off for 6 months? Can't we study this? You've been putting it off for a year. Why not put it off another year? And if they give me all these reasons why it must be done now, which I won't write a proposal unless I find out why it's urgent. If it's not urgent, I'm not going to do a proposal. If it is urgent, I will do a proposal. I'll put a 2-week deadline on it, which is generous for any kind of urgent project. And I'll say, hey, a week in, I'll give the sort of nice one. Hey, are there any questions I can answer about the proposal? I haven't heard back from you. I'll check back in a couple of days if I still haven't heard anything. And then in a couple of days, I'll say, I know this is really urgent for you guys. You said that this competitor was breathing down your neck, or I'll use some reminder of the pain and say, FYI, this is going to expire on Friday. And, the farther we get past that deadline, the less likely it is I'll be able to start, or the less likely I'll be able to honor these prices, or whatever the specifics of the situation are. But basically, I give them a pre-reminder or give them a warning signal that these prices aren't good forever, because what they might be doing is shopping around. And, they take the proposal and say, hey, let's, because my prices, I guarantee you my prices are always high. So they're like, okay, this guy gave us a price of, $175,000, which to the client, that kind of gives them a budget. Like, well, if we were going to give $175,000 to this guy for these results, how else could we spend that much money maybe we could outsource it, or maybe we could hire, internally. And these are all things that I basically have challenged them with previously. So that probably won't happen. But a lot of times if you give somebody a proposal and they don't get back to you at all, there could be shopping it around. So anyway, having the expiration date on there gives you an excuse to keep following up. I would probably follow up every, after 4 days, then maybe after the weekend on the Monday. Hey, did you look at it over the weekend? Just want to let you know my calendar's heating up. If this isn't going to go through, I've got other opportunities I'm going to go after, that kind of thing. Like, not desperate, but like, look, you guys get first right of refusal, but I've got other things going on here and I'm trying to slot this in. If you're just kicking the tires, get out of my face.
Yeah. And I can't wait on you forever.
Yeah, exactly. Put a ring on it. Cool. What else? We got anything else on proposals? I'm going to switch over to picks.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Yeah.
Let's see. Jeremy, what have you got?
Well, kind of related to proposals. I'm going to pick my service Remark. That's with a Q. Remark.io. It's a tool for freelancers and consultants for writing all sorts of documents, proposals, reports, even ebooks, that kind of thing. So hopefully it'll help some people write some better reports or proposals.
Yeah, if you like Markdown, you should check out Remark. I love Markdown. I love using Remark to sort of get me out of the design business because I'm not a great designer, and just the typography and everything is just like so great. So yeah, definitely +1 there.
Thanks. That's all I got.
Cool. Eric, you have any picks this week?
I do. The first one is probably a little embarrassing, but I'm going to go with it. So back in college, Blizzard came out with a game back when I was in college called Diablo 2. And I was old enough to have played Diablo 1 in college. But anyway, I haven't played this game in probably 15 years, something like that. But I just kind of randomly installed it again and started playing it. And I just assumed that there would be like 3 people on Earth still playing this. But there are actually a lot, and they have been actively doing stuff to the online universe of this game to make it more interesting or to keep it interesting over the last couple of decades. So I was kind of blown away by that. So any of you that are thinking out there that a Diablo 2 nostalgia play might be worth it, I would encourage you to check it out. I was surprisingly so now I'm playing this video game and I don't have time to play video games, but there it is.
Nice.
The other pick that I'll make is sort of a nod to one of the credit cards I have. I have a Capital One Visa card. And the reason I'm throwing that out there as a pick is this may be common to all credit cards, but this morning I got a notification that there might be fraud. And this has never happened to me, but I looked and sure enough, this was not a purchase that I made. And just their experience of getting those charges off my account, shutting it down and getting me a new card within a couple of days was just amazingly turnkey to me. It was like, don't worry, we've got this whole thing. You'll have a new card. You won't have to even like do anything with your vendors. It was just all, it's all very well done in my opinion. So I figured I'd give them a nod.
Nice.
And that's all I've got for this week.
Cool. Well, I'll follow in the spirit of, I don't have time to be doing this, but I'm doing it anyway. I binge watched season 1 and season 2 of Goliath on Amazon, which is sort of legal courtroom drama / thriller starring Billy Bob Thornton as a washed up lawyer who gets sucked back into the business to, deal with this sort of big case. And I was like, I cannot tell you how great. I'm sure it's not for everyone, but oh man, season 1 is like a tour de force of awesome writing and acting. It's just the greatest. And, they switched to a new sort of case for season 2, and season 2's gotten mixed reviews. I really enjoyed it, but it was definitely, but season 1 is just unbelievable. Really, really entertaining. So I definitely recommend to check that out if you're looking for something to binge watch. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that this week. Just the one pick. All right, folks. So that is it for this episode of the Freelancers Show. We hope to have you join us next week for the Freelancers Show. Talk to you then.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more. When you start a new project, typically you need things like a domain name, hosting, things like that. When I choose hosting, I pick mine for the options it gives. I like to know what I'm getting and set things up just how I like them. This is why for your projects, you should check out Linode. Linode servers feature native SSD storage, a 40 gigabyte network, and Intel E5 processors. That's all the power you need to run VMs under full control, or Docker containers, who doesn't love that, encrypted disks, and VPNs. Plus, they have 10 data centers across the world and add-ons like backups, Node Balancer, and Longview to help you control your server costs. They also offer block storage for your static files, and you can get started with a $20 credit if you use the code Freelancers Show 2018. That credit is good for 4 months on their 1 gigabyte server. That's a lot of time to try them out and see if they're the right fit for you. That code again is Freelancer Show 2018. Also, if you're interested in working for Linode, they're hiring. Head to linode.com/careers to see their available positions.